Hi, folks. I wanted to tell you a story today that you might not know if you're not a Star Wars prop geek like me. Excuse me. This is my first cup of coffee. Did you know there's a Wallace and Gromit clock in here? That makes me so happy. Um, that mug is from Black Raven Pottery, by the way, in East Aurora. She's a really talented artist. Um, you should swing by. It's cool. It's a cool shop. Um, so, anyways, I sat down in front of this project today because it's still unfinished. And there's all these tiny little steps, tiny parts that have to, you have to plan pretty far in advance. And then you make one little step and you're like, oh, okay, now what? So I enjoy projects that take some time, but it is kind of frustrating because there's no gratification right away. But I realized the story of the parts that I was working on is kind of a funny story. You've heard me mention before, you've probably seen it if you follow any kind of Star Wars prop stuff. When Return of the Jedi came around, they gave Luke a new lightsaber, and it turned out to be a recycled hilt from the first film, from A New Hope. It was one of Obi-Wan's stunts that he fought Darth Vader with before getting turned into the Force or whatever. Bet that helped with the PG ratings, because there was no blood. Anyways, so these were kind of unused for Empire Strikes Back because Luke and Vader both had camera flash lightsabers. These were used as like beater stunt props, so they kind of were not that big of a deal. Jedi hit, and they needed a new lightsaber, and they went and grabbed one of these. A couple of them, actually. But, as they filmed, when they went out to Yuma, Arizona in the U.S., either they didn't ship the lightsabers from the studio in England over to America, or they needed them at the same time or something, and they ended up making a new one. Close enough, right? Pretty much the same thing. So this was the stunt saber that they used out in Arizona. So Luke was swinging it around, knocking people off the sail barge when Jabba tried to have them executed. But this prop got a little bit more attention after that. It was a stunt prop, so, the paint job was messy and stuff like that. But back in the 90s, you'd see this, like there was a Magic of Myth exhibit with the Smithsonian. This shows up. The control box this here, which is kind of a term for like the thing with all the buttons and stuff. There's stuff on it. There's arrows, there's buttons. None of that is in the film. So what? Yeah, even when they do the close-up, they roll the lightsaber and you can't see this. There's a card covering everything, one of these. This is just an extender card. Back when computers were big enough that you had to slot a PCB in there to reach to the back panel, and the front of it would have an edge connector to plug into something else. So these were extender cards, essentially. They were long things. And these are copper traces, conductive traces, for either 22 or 44 pin edge connectors. So this was sitting over the top of it there, which you might see on toys and pictures and stuff like that. There were some rails. I don't have rails on mine right now. I still have to do that, but that's kind of the last bit. There were some gold rails, and then this card was closing the box. But yeah, in the exhibits, there's all this like stuff on the outside of it. So like where, why, what. That hole in our story was patched recently when, you can see it on YouTube actually. There's like a deleted scene where Luke, sitting in a cave, fiddles with his lightsaber with this thing, which is some medical equipment screwed together. Antique medical equipment. And this is clean, don't worry. But he's doing stuff, there's blinky lights, and then he turns on his lightsaber. Pretty sure they cut that because R2-D2 firing the lightsaber out was supposed to be the big reveal. It would kind of be less of a reveal if they already revealed it before. So I get it, But I guess that was a pickup shot after, like, live filming on set or whatever you call that. So they took the saber again, put it in, in the workshop to turn it into something fancy for that close-up shot for Darth Vader at the very end, you know, you've constructed a new lightsaber. Let me show you. That was fancier. So they had to take the stunt saber, clean it up for that shot, and it went under the knife again for this deleted scene. And that's kind of the part of this project that I've been working on, funnily enough. So in that scene, there's like a little cool level effect. I know it's 2024, so you could do this with a circuit board this big with, you know, resistors or LEDs, diodes, all in this tiny thing, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I try to make the props the way they were made back whenever they were made, because it's kind of a part of walking in their shoes, sort of, in a way. So I tried to make this with the old school electronics as best I could. So for example, when that starts, there's like a and he turns the circuit on. That's a big old toggle switch like that you're used to seeing in like calculators, 70s and 80s. There's smaller versions now, but they're those silver toggle switches right there that slide back and forth. You might see on any kind of electronics, radios, things like that. So it slides and completes the circuit, turning on a blinky light. These are blinky LEDs, current ones. I don't know enough electronics to take a chip that would control the blinkies in the diode and put resistors on it to calculate. I don't know how to do that. But I know how to buy lights with with a close enough not BPM. I'm used to piano stuff. The right oscillation, I guess, of the diode. Close enough. So this blinks, which is cool. And then he does something else in that little deleted scene. And the green changes to red. Isn't that kind of cool? I have a little tiny clip of me testing this on my channel. I don't have a channel. I just put up funny videos of me messing up over and over again. So anyways, so he does something here. It triggers to red. He lets go, and it goes back to green. And he shuts it off. And then he shuts it off. Okay. So, cool, right? It's for electronics people, it's probably super simple. It was not for me. Especially to kind of try to retrofit it with older tech, basically. So, yeah, that's a big part of this project. So it turns out there's a picture from the 90s or something that shows the box, and it looks like this. That's complicated, right? Not just the toggle switch, but all this green stuff. That's a circuit board, a bunch of circuit board parts. But it doesn't do anything. It's just a fake board. Not just this fake board. There's a fake board, then a fake board, then this stuff. And it's all in this tiny little area right here, which is ridiculous, first of all. But that's a cool challenge, right? So at first we're wondering, how the heck, like, what are the triangles? Because there are LEDs that are shaped like squares and triangles, but none of them are shaped like that, of that size. So how did they take a big LED and carve it down? But then they're only so long, so the area where they would connect to a circuit is kind of like in the way of other stuff in the box. So the best we can tell, these are acrylic, basically just acrylic rod that are colored, and the LEDs sit behind them. And essentially this is kind of how fiber optics works, because the lights are behind the thing. And so the light is filtered out through here, especially if you cover it. Look at that. The light just travels up the acrylic and out to where it's visible, which is kind of cool. The next part of the circuit was the changing between the two colors. And we don't know how they did it on set, because there's just little of that, and it's too dark, you can't really tell. Typically, a single pole double throw circuit would do that. Switch. Single pole double throw switch. So you've got the circuit, and this switch would literally toggle it between the two sides of the circuit or whatever. So there's lots of those. Those have been around for ages. You can even find switches that toggle between those two in like World War II aircraft and like radios from like the 50s, maybe the 60s is what I'm thinking of. But anyways, it's a pretty common thing. So they would have definitely had one back then. Unfortunately, this is a small friggin' box. So it's to the point now where it almost looks like they had a live circuit, and somewhere maybe on this or underneath it, there was just a way to short the circuit by touching two pieces of metal together, which is essentially what's going on inside of this. But maybe they were able to have a way for it to like short and divert signal to the right. Again, there's some holes in our story. But for me, I kept trying to take those type of switches from back then, the ones that would have been available back then, the smallest ones, and I still had to cut them down, still had to trim them, and I kept screwing up over and over again. I couldn't fit it in there within the 7 to 9 mil height inside the box. It was so frustrating. So eventually, short of trying to figure out, with my fellow builders what they did, I eventually just stuck with, this is a modern version of that switch. You can see the lever right there. This is a right angle one, so I can put it flat in the box, and the leads on the bottom of it tip downwards. So I have a modern breadboard on the bottom with some styrene on the bottom of the box to keep the metal box from shorting out the circuit. Interesting, right? I ended up carving a hole in the breadboard and soldering plates so that the battery was at the same level as the rest of the stuff to save space. Again, in the 80s, there were watch batteries. Like, that did exist, and like calculators that were that thin. So we don't know if they had a battery inside of here or if it was running up his sleeve, to something like bigger with more oomph. That's where my brain and our reference just goes. I think I'm sliding down. Anyways, so I have a pretty primitive circuit going on here. There's the on switch, my version of a way to toggle between the two LEDs, a battery right here. That's the one of the plates that I used, and this all lays, except for the front. We can see the toggle switch in museum exhibits, this thing. So this all is low enough. Yeah, I had to fold the LEDs down too because the diodes were too tall. Low enough to put the fake board on top. Of course, for me, I put a hole in the fake board so I could reach through to a point where I could reach the lever on the double pole switch to toggle between red and green. I had to put the switch somewhere where I could access it through the fake board, without it being too obvious. And I tried to even put it in the same area that you could see him doing stuff on set. Tried, anyways. There are people that are better at this than me on the replica prop forum. But anyways, there's a fake board under a fake board. And actually, yeah, in the scene, you can literally see him slide this open, turn it on, slide it even more, and he does stuff, and then slides it back shut, which is pretty clever. It's pretty clever. It's a cool tactile scene of using a prop or something. So there are rails. That's another part to this project. I have to put my two-step. The box, those rails were raised so that there was space underneath for the switches and stuff like that. So I have to raise them up with a couple sets of, I think, right angle brass and some plastic, model making plastic, so I can slide this open and do the thing. And hopefully, I did this specifically so that I could take this stuff out, replace the battery if I need to. This is just CR 1025 or 24, whatever that size is, to fit in here. And again, yeah, battery sizes matter. This is ridiculous. This is utterly ridiculous. Look, this video is like 15 minutes long. So I don't know. They wired up so many electronics on Star Wars. They even did smaller and smaller bulbs to give you the idea that the spaceships were bigger and bigger. Pretty freaking clever. So this was probably simple as hell for them. Not for Tom. But again, this prop went through so much crap. I mean, it was a stunt saber, then it was cleaned up and machined for a close-up, and then it was machined again. This box was probably solid. And they had to empty. They went in with a mill and just emptied the thing. So much. And then, of course, it was dropped at some point, I'm pretty sure, because in the 90s, in the exhibit, it's like the rails are just freaking cockeyed. There's super glue all over the box. And there's a chip taken out of one of the triangles. Oops, whoever did that is probably still kicking themselves because that was probably upsetting. Another clue, because the red triangle is chipped, if it was an LED, that probably would have broken, moved quite a bit more, but it was strong enough to just take a chip out of the side of it, so it was probably a longer piece of plastic. Right? Anyways, oh gosh, yeah, whole day, I had to carve the green, second of focus, I had to carve the green one to fit around the toggle switch because they took up the same area inside the box. So I had to carve a chunk out of it to fit up against the toggle switch. It's a lot. It's a lot. Anyways, Luke's hero lightsaber went through a lot of crap. Like we all do. But yeah, this isn't just like, this hilt was this is a Dave Parkin hilt. So he worked with a couple of people to model the saber the best we can. And then a run on the RPF was done. So you buy into the run and they make they get a machine shop to machine like 100. So you get a kit essentially. You know, the raw metal, the box, the parts. I took mine and put the extra set screw right there because that was used for the stunt scenes before this, before it looked like this. I'm pretty sure today you can see that hole filled with metal and then machined over, which is called blanking when you plug a hole. So I went ahead and did that so I could put steel in, and I drilled a little further too so the steel rod can go deep enough that it was probably usable. When they did the scene where Darth Vader holds it and it's like, you've constructed a new lightsaber, there is actually a blade on it with either white paint or reflective material. So I wanted to be able to do that someday. So it needed a tang. Obviously, I carved the hell out of my box too because I'm custom doing the electronics in it and stuff like that. Dave also folded tri-rings for this. There was a D-ring, but it was a triangle shape. You might see it on like fashion stuff like purses and bags and belts and stuff like that. But the one, I got some rust on here. I'm gonna put some oil on that. They're steel. The one on the prop was like raw steel, so it kind of looked like they bent it themselves. So Dave figured out a way to do that. Pretty freaking cool. Yeah. One of the other lovely things I love about this prop is that each of these rings is a different thickness, and the grooves, they're all tilted that way. Higher on this side, less on that side, because they were done manually machined, I think, with a single bevel. So they went in one way, went in the other way, went in one way, went in the other way. And the way they did it to the left was a steeper angle. Or the cutting bit that they used was cockeyed. But I have a feeling this makes a lot more sense, which I think is kind of wonderful. Especially because the original was done the same way. The Obi-Wan stunt, these are also different distances from each other and thicknesses. For the same reason, I think. The master was done in like walnut or some hardwood, because you can see hardwood texture in the metal casts later on. So that's the ridiculous Luke Hero lightsaber story. Oh my god, this is a 20-minute video. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I got to make some rails and fit this so that this can slide open. I think I have some more to do on this too. I did a little welding, soldering. Somebody I know calls it welding. I don't know. I did a little soldering on this because there's brass pieces from the Death Star model. The unfinished Death Star that they were like building in Return of the Jedi had a bunch of laser etched brass all over it. Some of that is on this. There's some fake wires and stuff like that. It's a real board. I mean, this is from the calculator they used for this fake part, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, that's a lot. I need more coffee to handle this. This is maybe whiskey. This is ridiculous. Okay, I'm gonna go now.